3 years ago, I thought I was in a happy marriage. We had a home, a son, traditions. And today I was standing in the middle of a restaurant, holding proof of my husband's double life in my hands. But you know what was the worst part? Not the betrayal. Not the lies. It was the eyes of his little daughter, the one I didn't even know existed, until tonight. My name is Julia, and 3 months ago I found out that my husband wasn't just cheating on me, he had a whole other family. I was at the pharmacy picking up antibiotics for our son when the cashier looked at the name on the prescription and said, "Oh, are you Mark's wife? I see him here a lot with his little girl." "Mark? My Mark?" I asked, frozen. "Yes, Mark Thompson. He was here last week. His daughter had a fever." I smiled, paid, and left the pharmacy feeling like I had just fallen off a cliff. I didn't say anything at home. Not yet. I made dinner, helped my son with his homework, kissed Mark goodnight as if nothing had happened. And then I waited. I followed him on Thursday when he said he had a late meeting. He drove across town, stopped at a nice blue house, and went inside without knocking. It was as if he lived there. I waited an hour. When the lights dimmed and a girl of about 5 peeked out the window in her pajamas, I drove away. The next day, I hired a private investigator. Her name was Jenna, and she was worth every penny. Within a week, I had photos, names, dates, and even a copy of a fake lease with Mark's name on it. He met Rachel, another woman, 6 years ago. I was pregnant with our son at the time. He told her he was divorced, that we had joint custody. She didn't know I existed. Neither did their daughter. The worst part? Our wedding anniversary fell right between their child's birthday and Rachel's. Mark juggled birthdays like it was nothing. I didn't rush into confrontation right away. I planned. I wanted him to feel everything I felt: shock, betrayal, confusion. So I waited for his birthday. I threw a big party. I invited his family, his colleagues, even Rachel. I used a fake number to text her from his assistant, saying that Mark wanted her to surprise him. That it was time. She arrived 20 minutes after the party started, holding their daughter, dressed up, smiling nervously. Mark froze. Everyone froze. "Honey," I said loudly, "would you like to introduce us to your daughter?" There was a buzz. Someone spilled champagne. His mother turned pale. Mark tried to say something, but I took out the envelope. I handed it to his father. Inside were copies of the lease agreement, Jenny's report, photos, screenshots of correspondence. "It seems your son has been very busy," I said. 2 lives. 2 women. 2 lies. Rachel turned to him, her face full of anger. "You said you were divorced," she shouted. "You said she was clingy and crazy." I smiled. He always had a vivid imagination. Rachel left, pulling her daughter with her. Mark tried to follow her, but his brother stood in the doorway. I didn't stay either. My things were already packed. That night, I moved in with my sister. Mark called. He wrote. He came over. He cried. I filed for divorce. I sent Rachel all the documents that helped her see the truth. It turned out that he had spent some of our joint savings on a house for Rachel. I found a lawyer. I went to court. The judge was not impressed. I got the house, full custody of my son, alimony, and the satisfaction that we both left. No one stayed. No one forgave. And now? I'm free. I'm fine. I look in the mirror and I don't see a victim. I see a woman who was burned but didn't let the fire destroy her. The interesting thing is that betrayal doesn't break you. It shows how much fire you still have left to fight. On Saturday, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun hadn't yet broken through the curtains, and the house was so quiet that I could hear Ethan tossing and turning in the next room. Mark was breathing on my neck evenly, calmly, as if his life was normal. And mine was no longer. I lay there and stared at the ceiling. The silence was heavy, like a concrete slab, and I suddenly realized that I was afraid to move. Not because Mark might suspect something, but because any movement might make me cry. I hadn't cried since last night. And I wasn't going to. When I got up, coffee was already brewing in the kitchen. It was Mark. A habit as mechanical as brushing his teeth. I heard him talking on the phone, laughing, joking about something. Then he turned on the music. The same playlist he always played on weekends, a little blues, a little indie. As always. Only it wasn't as usual anymore. I walked over to the mirror in the bathroom and stared at myself for a long time. My eyes were puffy, but not from crying, from not sleeping. My hair was messy, my pajamas were wrinkled. But something else had changed. There was no longer any naivety in my gaze. There was wariness. And a very cold calm. I hardly ate anything for breakfast. Mark talked about work, about a new client, about how his boss had once again failed to appreciate his presentation. I nodded, muttered really, and oh well, but it was all automatic. Inside, I was counting the hours. How many days? How many weeks? How much time was left between us and her? I might have to stay late on Tuesday, he said, avoiding my gaze. Investor meeting. I looked at him. For a moment. Intently. And nodded silently. He had no idea how much he had said in that sentence. The whole day passed in a strange tension. Ethan wanted to go to the park, so we went. Mark and I laughed when Ethan fell into a pile of leaves and then pretended to be a zombie. We ate ice cream, sat on a bench, held hands. And all the while I was thinking, you know how to lie. You're very good at it. But I'll learn too. In the evening, when I was putting Ethan to bed, he asked, "Mom, why are you so quiet today?" I smiled and ran my fingers through his hair. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. Tomorrow will be better." He closed his eyes. And I sat there for another 15 minutes while he fell asleep, thinking, tomorrow. I'll start looking for the truth. On Sunday morning, Mark suggested going to his parents' house for lunch. I said I couldn't. I had a headache. I was tired. I muttered something about blood pressure. He didn't insist, which was strange. He just nodded, agreeing too quickly. He seemed happy to go without me. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I made some coffee, sat down at my laptop, and for the first time in a long time, started digging into his life. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. A quiet, nagging suspicion had awakened in me, and I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. First, I checked his bank statements. We had a joint account, although we didn't use it very often. I found several unfamiliar transactions, stores I didn't recognize. One was for children's clothing, another was for a cafe on the other side of town. I opened a map. The cafe was 10 minutes away from that pharmacy. My fingers trembled a little. Next, I looked at his search history on our shared tablet. There were several queries like house rental agreement template and best schools in the area. That was a week ago. Mark never said he wanted to move. But maybe he didn't want to move with us. I scrolled further. Photos. He had always been careful. Everything on his phones was password protected, and I didn't know the password. But the tablet. There were several photos taken a few months ago. One was in a park. On a bench I'd never been to. Mark and some girl with dark curls, wearing a yellow sundress, holding a balloon. She was laughing, and he was holding her shoulders. Like a dad. The photo was taken at the end of August. I remembered the date. It was the same day he said he was going on a business trip to Boston. I sat in the kitchen, in complete silence, staring at the screen. And you know what was the scariest thing? I wasn't in shock anymore. No. Just cold. A cold that slowly enveloped me from the inside. Mark came home in the evening with a box of leftovers from lunch. His mom always packed something for him. He was cheerful, saying that his father was grumbling about politics again and that his mother was showing him old photo albums. I nodded, smiled, and heated up his dinner. Meanwhile, a decision was forming in my head. Tomorrow I would take action. We cannot wait any longer. On Monday, I woke up before everyone else. The sun hadn't yet broken through the blinds, but I was already sitting on the edge of the bed, hunched over like an old woman. The room was in semi-darkness, and it was easier to think in the darkness. It was easier not to scream. I crept into the kitchen barefoot without turning on the light. I opened the cupboard and took out an old box of documents, the one where I kept all my receipts, copies of bills, and my marriage contract. I had once classified these things according to the principle of just in case. And now that case had come. I sat down on the floor, legs tucked under me, and spread the documents around me like tarot cards. But these weren't symbols of the future. They were evidence of the past. and perhaps the key to getting out of this marriage with dignity. When Mark and Ethan started to wake up, I was already sitting at my laptop, filling out an application form for a private investigator. I read about 10 websites. I chose carefully. I didn't want some emotionally motivated woman from a forum who worked for cash without a contract. I needed a professional. Someone who didn't ask unnecessary questions and acted quickly. Her name was Jenna. She had a calm voice and a very clear plan of action. We agreed to meet the next morning. Incognito. When I returned to the kitchen, Mark was putting bread in the toaster. He turned to me with that same familiar smile that once made me melt. "Hi, beautiful," he said. "You're early. Everything okay?" I nodded. I just couldn't sleep. He leaned over and kissed me on the temple. This gesture, so familiar, used to make me feel warm. Now it made me feel disgusted. Not because of the physicality. It was because of the lie he brought with him every time he touched me. While Ethan ate his porridge, Mark started talking about his work week. Another late meeting on Tuesday. A mandatory lunch with colleagues on Friday. Word by word, he painted a picture, a perfect alibi, carefully thought out. And I just sat there, listening, nodding, memorizing. "Is something on your mind?" he asked suddenly. I paused for a second. I looked him straight in the eyes. "What if it is?" I asked quietly. "Would it change anything?" He smiled, not quite sincerely. "You seem kind of mysterious today." I didn't answer. I just got up, kissed Ethan on the top of his head, and went to the bedroom to check if all my files were on the flash drive. And if my notebook with notes was where it should be. I had a plan. It wasn't completely clear yet, but the framework was there. I knew I had to be smart, careful, quiet, and most importantly, inconspicuous. This time I didn't break down. I didn't fall into hysterics. I didn't deliver an angry tirade. I studied. I waited. I became a version of myself that I couldn't have imagined possible yesterday. The version that betrayal had made me. The next morning, I woke up feeling as if something inside me had shifted. It wasn't painful or sudden, just like a crack in an old mirror. You can still see your reflection, but you know it's not real. Mark left earlier than usual. He said he had a meeting with partners in the city center. I didn't ask any questions. I just wished him a successful day. He looked at me suspiciously, either surprised by my compliance or sensing that I already knew something. But he didn't say anything. When the door closed behind him, I stood in the hallway for a minute. In silence. I looked at the empty hallway, his shoes by the wall, the coat I had given him for his birthday. And suddenly I realized that this whole house was a museum. A museum of our illusion. I walked through the rooms. I stopped by the fireplace. There was our family photo, the three of us, smiling on the beach. I was holding Ethan in my arms, Mark was hugging us both. And again, the same feeling. A crack. The smiles remained, but the reality was gone. I couldn't throw the photo away. Not yet. But I took it off the mantelpiece and put it in a drawer. I needed to stop looking at the past as something that could still be recovered. At 10 o'clock, I met with Jenna. We sat in a small cafe on the outskirts, a quiet place where hardly anyone knew us. She immediately inspired trust, reserved, collected, without asking any unnecessary questions. Her notebook was already half full when I finished my story. "Are you sure you want to know everything?" she asked seriously. I held her gaze. "If there's even one corner of this hell that I miss, I'll regret it." "Yes, I want everything." She nodded. "It will take a few days. I'll need to keep an eye on him, make some inquiries about his property, social media, and bank activities. If he really has another family, I should be able to confirm that quickly." I thanked her. I paid the advance. And I walked out onto the street with a strange feeling, as if I had signed a contract with myself. A contract for insight. The day dragged on slowly. I tried to work from home, respond to work emails, call my colleagues, but my attention was unfocused. I looked at the screen and thought about the photos I might receive soon. About the face of that girl. About the eyes that might have Mark's gaze. After school, I picked up Ethan. We stopped for ice cream, just like we used to, as if nothing had changed. But I caught myself smiling. Part of me was no longer with him in that moment. It was as if I was watching us from the sidelines, from the audience, where you know the show will end in tears. Mark came home in a good mood that evening. He brought wine and pizza with my favorite sauce. He acted like himself, a loving husband and caring father. And I thought, how long can you keep playing this character, Mark? And how long can I keep pretending to believe? Before going to bed, he hugged me. His body was warm and familiar, like a blanket. But it felt like I was hugging a ghost. And that night, I opened a new notebook on my nightstand for the first time. I made my first entry. Day 1. Waiting. Mark left for work, unaware that I was no longer just a housewife who cooked dinner and sorted laundry. Now I was a spectator in his play. And I knew the finale was near. He kissed me on the cheek, not as sincerely as he used to. And I noticed it for the first time. Perhaps for the first time ever. I might be late today, he said, fastening his watch as he left. I have a meeting with the lawyers, and then maybe something with the finances. I'll call you when I know more. I nodded. Smiled. Don't rush. We'll manage. He didn't even look at me. And at that moment I thought, it's not us anymore. It's me. And it's you. 2 worlds. 2 stages. When the door closed, I lay down on the sofa, took a blanket and hugged a pillow, but not because I wanted to sleep. I just didn't know what to do with myself. Jenna didn't call. I knew it was early, but my brain demanded some kind of answer. Confirmation that I wasn't going crazy. That it wasn't all a figment of my tiredness or hurt feelings. I got up. I went to the bathroom. I washed my hands for a long time. I stared at the mirror. Someone else was looking at me. A pale, exhausted woman with dark circles under her eyes and pressed lips. I used to love my appearance. Now I'm just used to it. But today, for the first time, it scared me. Something was awakening inside me. Something wild. Relentless. I took out the same notebook where I had made my first entry yesterday. I opened it. A new line. Day 2. Emptiness is worse than the truth. I tried to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every sound in the house seemed too loud. Every movement seemed suspicious. I walked from room to room as if I were chasing myself. After lunch, I went to the grocery store, not because we needed anything, but because I couldn't stand sitting at home any longer. Other women passed me by, with shopping carts, children, husbands, cell phones. Everyone seemed to be living their normal lives. And suddenly I felt anger boiling up inside me. Unexpectedly. Without warning. Why me? Why did this happen to me? I did everything right. I was supportive. I believed. I built this life brick by brick. In the evening, Mark came home later than he promised. And again, it was the same pattern, a little tiredness, a few apologies, a few kisses. He sat down next to me on the couch and told me how hard it had been with his clients. Is Ethan asleep? He asked. An hour ago. You don't look well, he muttered. Just a hard day, I replied. He reached out and touched my shoulder. You know, we could take some time off. Maybe go to the mountains? Just the 2 of us. You and me, no phones. I nodded, but inside I wanted to laugh. The mountains? Seriously? He wants to cut me off while his other woman thinks he's away on business? Or does he just want to keep me from asking questions? Later, when he went to take a shower, I got my phone and checked my email. There was a new message. From Jenna. Subject, initial results. You had your suspicions and unfortunately, they are not unfounded. I have something for you. Can we meet tomorrow morning? In person, preferably. I'll show you everything. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow. We met at the same cafe as the first time. It was still early, almost empty. It was drizzling outside, and people were walking with umbrellas, like actors in a foreign film. I watched a man trying to hold his coffee and umbrella at the same time and thought, this is what life is. Balancing. Sometimes you spill everything. Jenna was already sitting there with her laptop and a small folder. When I approached, she immediately looked up, her eyes serious and calm. But something in her gaze told me more than any words could. She was in no hurry. We ordered coffee. And only then did she open the folder. So, she began in an even tone, you had a premonition. And I'm afraid you were right. I began surveillance after our conversation. And over the course of 3 days, your husband visited an address that does not match any of his official places of employment. She laid out the photos. I looked at them silently. A photo of Mark getting out of a car, carrying a toy. A photo of him walking toward the door of a blue house. A photo of a woman opening the door, young, pretty, with childish hair clips in her hair. And standing next to her is a little girl, 5 years old. Dark, curly hair. She is laughing, holding his hand. I gasped. Her name is Rachel. She works as a nurse at a clinic in the same neighborhood. According to social media and rental information, she has lived there for 5 years. Your husband's name is listed as the second signatory on the rental documents. He is not the owner, but he is the guarantor of the agreement. I didn't say anything. No, thank you, no, I knew, no more. I just stared at the photo. Then Jenna slowly, almost respectfully, pulled out another sheet. And here, you're going to need your lawyer. This bill is from your joint bank account. Transfers to Rachel L. Thompson. Every month. Small amounts, but regular. With comments like school, doctor, birthday. I felt my fingers clench into a fist. Not out of anger. Out of humiliation. He had used my money. Mine, because I had earned it. I had worked double shifts while he built a new family. Their child. I whispered. Is it his? Jenna glanced to the side. I don't have official confirmation. But Rachel doesn't list the father on social media. The child is registered under her last name. But the visual resemblance is obvious. And she nodded at the photo of the girl sitting on Mark's lap, pressing her cheek against him. There's a connection between them. They're not just acquaintances. I felt nauseous. Not physically, but emotionally. This web of lies, it didn't just hurt me. It rewrote our entire life. Jenna didn't ask how I was feeling. And I was grateful for that. She knew this wasn't the time for therapy. It was time for action. I have a few more things to check, she added. But this is enough to move forward. Do you want me to continue? I looked at her and said in a voice that surprised even me. Continue. Do everything you can. I need every little detail. She nodded. We paid. I stepped outside and the rain had stopped. I stood on the sidewalk, the photo in my bag, and thought. That's it. The illusion is shattered. And now I'm not just a wife. I'm a witness. And I'm a judge. That night, I opened my notebook. Day 3. The truth didn't come suddenly. It came to me quietly. But now it's sitting next to me, and it won't let go. Returning home after meeting Jenna was like entering a house after a fire. Everything was in its place, but it wasn't the same. The air smelled of smoke. The furniture felt foreign. Even my favorite pillow seemed hostile. I put my bag on a chair in the hallway, took off my coat, and went straight to the bathroom. I turned on the cold water. I held my hands under the stream for a long time, until the trembling in my fingers stopped. I didn't cry. Not yet. Then I made some tea, opened my laptop, and opened a blank document. I named it Map of Truth. Everything had to be logical. Like in court. Facts. Dates. Times. Amounts. Locations. Confirmations. I divided the screen into 2 parts. On the left was our life. What I had seen, heard, and believed. On the right was their life. What he had hidden. 1. The child's birthday is September 14th. That day, Mark was on a business trip to Houston. He sent me a bouquet of flowers by courier. And he said he missed me. 2. Rachel is a nurse. He panicked about his annual checkups. He said he didn't trust the medical system. 3. Photo in the park, August 23rd. That evening, we celebrated our anniversary. He gave me a piece of jewelry. There was still wine in the glasses when I went to wash the dishes. I kept writing. I created a chronology of the betrayal. And then I did what I was afraid to do. For the first time since meeting Jenna, I opened our wedding video. Just to see how I felt then. And I saw myself. Happy naive. In a light-colored dress that now seemed like a caricature. I cried in the footage, but with joy. Now I watched silently, freezing with every passing minute. I paused the video at the moment when Mark looks me in the eyes and says, I promise I'll always be honest. I paused it and took a screenshot. I added it to the file. It was no longer an archive of memories. It was case number 1. With evidence, witnesses, emotional crimes. Late at night, I cleaned everything up, the printouts, photos, notebook. I hid it in the bottom drawer of my desk and locked it. Mark came home after 11. He said he had been at a bar with a client. He smelled strongly of lavender shampoo and something else, feminine. "Were you awake?" he asked. I was waiting. I wanted to say good night. He paused, a little surprised. "That's sweet. We don't do that very often." "Yes," I replied softly. "But from now on, everything will be a little different, won't it?" He didn't understand. That night, I slept restlessly. I had a nightmare. I was standing on stage in a wedding dress, and the hall was empty. There was only one person there, a little girl with curly hair who was looking at me with pity. I woke up with cold sweat on my neck. In the morning, I wrote, Day 4. There is more pain in my memory than in reality. I knew the date by heart. June 7th. The day Mark was born. And, as it turned out, the day he would be reborn. Without a mask. After meeting Jenna, I had enough evidence to make his life hell. But just throwing "I know" in his face was too easy. Too mundane. And he didn't deserve an easy way out. He deserved a spectacle. A public fall. So I started planning. I booked a restaurant. A large, bright one with a banquet hall and a children's area. I told Mark I was planning a surprise for him. He was delighted, even a little touched. "Oh, you still remember." His cynicism was no longer hidden. I wrote a guest list, his parents, his brother and his wife, a few colleagues from work, friends. Everyone who considered him a model family man. And then, the most important part. I created a fake account, pretended to be Mark's assistant, and wrote a message to Rachel. "Hi, Rachel. This is Anna, Mark's assistant. It's his birthday this Friday, and he would really like to surprise you and Emily. It's finally time to bring the family together. Meet at 7 p.m. Just keep it a secret." I sent it and waited. She read the message 20 minutes later. An hour later, I got a reply. "Okay, we'll be there." It's unexpected, but nice. I almost laughed. Nice, yeah, right. Next, the preparations. I ordered a cake with the inscription, "Our best husband, dad, and friend." I ordered balloons, a banner, and a photo projection of family moments, including ours together and those I pulled from Rachel's social media. I also prepared an envelope. It contained printouts, a bank statement with transfers to Rachel's name, a rental agreement, photos from the park, the pharmacy, near the house, screenshots of messages, GPS route transcripts. I signed the envelope, "For the family." Her birthday was approaching, and Mark became sweet. Like a puppy. He brought me coffee, asked if I was happy, suggested we watch a TV series together. His intuition must have sensed something. But logic told him, everything is fine. And I let that logic win for a few more days. 2 days before the event, I checked the restaurant. I asked the manager to leave the microphone free. I ordered champagne. Everything had to look perfect. Perfect before the explosion. June 7th. The day I woke up and was no longer his wife. Just an actress in the final act. I woke up at 6:30. Ethan was still asleep, his mouth slightly open. He had to go to his morning club at school, a technical program that lasted until mid-June. Just a few more days and then summer vacation. But today I needed this routine. It distracted me. It gave me the illusion of normality. I made breakfast, blueberry pancakes, Mark's favorite. He came downstairs in a t-shirt, sleepy, smiling, hugged me from behind, and kissed me on the neck. "Wow, festive mood," he winked. "Is this all for me?" I turned around and smiled. "You're the star today. Everything has to be perfect." "I adore you," he said and sat down at the table. I could barely stop myself from biting my lip. Because he said those words as if he still had the right to say them. After breakfast, I took Ethan to school. He kissed me on the cheek and ran to class, carrying his Lego project. I stood in the yard and watched him go, the last peaceful face in my life. In the afternoon, I went to the restaurant. The festive banquet hall was decorated with gold and blue balloons, the colors of Mark's favorite baseball team. On the screen was a slideshow of his photos: childhood, college, work, wedding. I deliberately included a photo from our honeymoon, me in a white swimsuit, him hugging me on the beach. And one where he's holding Ethan, happy, with wet hair. And a few more that I got from Rachel's social media. There was a little girl with her hair down at a picnic. She was sitting on his lap. The caption read, "Our birthday hero." The evening began at 6:30 p.m. sharp. Guests arrived one after another: Mark's parents, his brother and wife, colleagues from the office, a few friends. The restaurant was buzzing with laughter, glasses clinked, children ran between the tables. I smiled, shook hands, accepted compliments for the organization. Everyone looked at me with warmth. What a caring wife, what a wonderful hostess. No one knew that this was my moment of reckoning. "Where's the guest of honor?" his mother asked. "He'll be here any minute," I replied. And then at 7:02 p.m. everything stopped. The restaurant door opened and a woman entered. In her arms was a little girl of about 5, wearing a white dress with sparkles. Both were dressed up, a little tense, but smiling. "Hello," said the woman. "We're here for a surprise." I approached. "Are you Rachel?" "Yes." "And you are?" "Anna?" I smiled. "No, I'm Julia, Mark's wife." Her eyes flew up. Her face turned white. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Hold on tight. This is going to be hard to hear." I turned to the guests. "Dear friends, thank you all for coming. Today is not just my husband's birthday. Today is a day of revelations. Allow me to introduce you to Rachel and his daughter." The noise died down. Someone whispered, "What?" A glass fell to the floor. Mark's mother clutched her heart. At that moment, as if on cue, the door opened again. And Mark appeared. In a suit. With a bouquet. Smiling. And when he saw us, he froze. "Julia? What's going on?" I took the microphone. "Hello, my love. I have a few gifts for you. The first is a surprise. Here is your other family. The second is an envelope, which I will now give to your father. Inside are copies of bank statements, photos, a rental agreement, and letters. Proof of your double life." I walked up to Mark's father and handed him the envelope. "It all started 6 years ago. When I was pregnant with Ethan, you were already seeing Rachel. And for 5 years, you juggled 2 worlds. You cheated. You lied. And you used our money. What a wonderful man. Just a dream." Mark stood in the middle of the room, pale. The bouquet fell from his hands. "It's not like that," he mumbled. "Then explain," I said to Rachel, "how you told her I was a crazy ex, when we were married all this time?" Rachel looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears. "You said you were divorced." I wanted to. I didn't." "Shut up," she interrupted. "I dragged my child into this." Mark's brother stepped forward and stood between him and Rachel. "I'll beat you to a pulp if you take one step toward her." I raised my glass. To the truth, friends. To the fact that everything secret comes out sooner or later. And to the fact that I am finally free. I took a sip. And then I just walked out. No tears. No hysterics. Just liberation. The morning after the party, I woke up in my sister's room. I was lying under the covers with a cup of coffee, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I just was. Like a person who had gone through fire and was now checking to see if they still had skin. My phone was silent. I knew Mark was trying to call. But after the night when his double life had been shattered in front of his family, friends, and colleagues, what else was there to say? At 10 a.m., the first message arrived. "I need to talk to you." "It's not what you think." I didn't answer. At 11. "Please, Julia. I made a mistake, but I still love you. I'll fix everything." I threw the phone in a drawer. Instead, I called a lawyer. Ms. Reyes was recommended by Jenna, cold, collected, without unnecessary sentimentality. Just what I needed. "I want to file for divorce," I told her on the phone. "And I want to do it right. And fast." "Do you have all the documents?" "The evidence?" she asked. "Everything. Photos, bank documents, statements, even GPS." "Perfect. Let's get started." The next few weeks were a marathon. Notaries, consultations, court filings. Mark filed a counterclaim, trying to prove that we were both at fault and requesting joint custody of Ethan. But his lawyer was clearly not prepared for the evidence I had put together. And even less so for Rachel's testimony. Yes, she went to court and testified. Her words were simple. I didn't know he was married. If I had known, I would never have let him near me or my daughter. He deceived us both. It destroyed everything Mark had tried to protect. The judge was blunt. You didn't just commit moral adultery. You fraudulently used joint funds and deceived both parties. This is serious. The decision is, custody goes to the mother. The house goes to the mother. Payments will be made according to income, including compensation for damages. I sat in the courtroom, motionless. When the decision was announced, I wasn't happy. I just felt something heavy lift off my shoulders. After the hearing, Mark came up to me. Julia. His voice was quiet. I didn't want it to end like this. I lost my way. I thought I could have everything. I interrupted. Have me, Rachel, Ethan, Emily. And lie to everyone. I just wanted happiness. And I wanted the truth. And now I have it. I left. His tears meant nothing to me anymore. That night, I walked home, to our new home with my sister, and for the first time in a long time, I smelled the scent of linden trees. I breathed in deeply. Slowly. Deeply. And then I wrote in my notebook. Day 30. The pain doesn't go away right away. But I'm breathing on my own now. A month passed. Life began to fall into a rhythm. I woke up not to anxiety, but to my alarm clock. Instead of going to meetings with lawyers, I took Ethan to the pool. My sister and I drank wine in the evenings, watched TV series, and I even caught myself laughing a few times. Really laughing. People started inviting me out for coffee, friends, neighbors, even Ethan's classmate's mother. I kept my distance for now. I needed to learn to be with myself, not in a relationship. Not married. Just Julia. But there was one but. On Monday morning, when I was taking out the trash, I found an envelope by the door. No return address. No signature. Inside was a piece of paper folded in four. The handwriting wasn't Mark's. It wasn't Rachel's. And it wasn't my lawyer's. What you see isn't the whole truth. There's another level. Take a closer look at June 2021. He wasn't just with you. And you know that. My heart sank. 2021? That was when Mark said he had been transferred to a new office. It was around that time that he started coming home late and going on business trips more often. But I was busy then. Ethan was having health problems, and I often didn't pay attention to the little things. I reread the letter 3 times. No signature. No clues as to where it came from. That evening, I sat in the kitchen with Jenna. Yes, we had stayed in touch. She had become more than just a detective. Can you check where Mark was in June 2021? I asked. She nodded and immediately grabbed her tablet. I saved this data. Give me an hour. I sat there, clutching my cup of tea. Maybe it was someone's game. Maybe it was a vengeful gesture. But something about that letter made me wary again. It was as if it wasn't over. As if one of the chapters was still waiting for its finale. Jenna returned 40 minutes later. In June 2021, Mark wasn't in Houston like he said. I tracked his bank activity, a hotel in Savannah, Georgia. For nights. The same room. He told me he was living on a project with a client. Julia, she interrupted, he wasn't there alone. I felt the ground shift slightly beneath my feet. With whom? Jenna looked at me. Her voice became quiet. That remains to be determined. However, there is one photograph. I will only show it to you if you are ready. I nodded. She showed me the photo. It was taken from a distance. Mark was on the terrace of a restaurant. With a young woman. Light hair. Slender. With a glass of wine. And it wasn't Rachel. And it definitely wasn't me. I took a deep breath. That night, a new entry appeared in my notebook. Day 40. When you think the game is over, someone somewhere makes another move. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't because I was anxious, it was because I needed to know. That woman in Savannah. Why did he go there then? And who is she? Another one? Another layer of lies? I dressed for battle, dark jeans, a black t-shirt, my hair in a bun. I went to Jenny's. She was already waiting with her laptop. I got the hotel camera footage, she said instead of a greeting. There's another photo of that woman. And the room was paid for with a credit card you didn't see in your reports. He had a third card. I felt a chill run down my spine. Show me the photo. Jenny nodded. She turned the screen toward me. This time the image was clearer. The woman was leaning slightly toward Mark, laughing. She had a tattoo, a small inscription on her wrist. And something about her smile seemed familiar to me. But I couldn't say why. Take that photo, I asked. I want to take it with me. Where? To someone. I'm not sure, but I think I've seen her somewhere. And not on the internet. That same day, I went to Mark's office. His former office. He quit right after he was exposed. He had to flee, no doubt. But I knew that one of his colleagues, Sandra, had visited my page before and liked some of my old photos. She remembered me. I went up to the reception desk and said I wanted to give something to Sandra. A minute later, she came out, looking surprised. Oh, hi. Julia, right? Yes. Can I talk to you for a minute? We went outside. I took out the photo. Do you know this woman? Sandra looked closely. Her eyes widened slightly. That's Andrea. She worked with us briefly in 2021. But then she disappeared. I think it was after the conference in Georgia. Andrea. Was she seeing Mark? Sandra looked uncomfortable. I don't know. But after that trip, she quit. And she started posting strange things on social media. Then she deleted everything. No one knows where she is now. I returned home with a new name, a new lead, and an old feeling. This wasn't just another fling. It was a shadow that lingered longer than the others. That night, I sat down at my computer, opened a new document, and wrote, Andrea. Savannah. 2021. What did you know that made you disappear? And then, in my notebook, Day 41. When lies stop surprising you, they start scaring you. I didn't sleep all night. The name Andrea kept spinning around in my head like an old record on repeat. Something about this story wouldn't let me rest. Too many coincidences. And something about her smile, it wasn't right. The next morning, I texted Jenna. We need to find Andrea. Anything you can find. Information, address, family. I need to talk to her. Jenna replied almost immediately. I'm already on it. But she didn't just disappear. All we have is an old LinkedIn resume and an old address. I'll ask around. I couldn't wait. I drove to the address Jenna had given me, a small house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. An elderly woman opened the door. Excuse me, I said. Do you know where Andrea is? She lived here a few years ago. The woman looked at me for a long time. Who are you to her? Mark Thompson's ex-wife. The woman's eyes changed. She sighed and opened the door wider. Come in. She turned out to be her aunt. She said that after that trip to Georgia, Andrea was broken. She came back with nothing, shut herself in her house, then went to Florida. And she disappeared off the radar. Did she do something to you? The aunt asked. No, I said. It's my husband. My ex. He did something to her. The woman nodded. I think she loved him. But he destroyed her. Or something. I didn't ask. I left her my number. If Andrea ever gets in touch, tell her I'm not angry. And I want to know the truth. 3 days later, the phone rang. This is Andrea, said a quiet voice. You left a message. Yes. Thanks for calling. Can we meet? I'm in Jacksonville. Are you ready to go? I drove for 7 hours. Alone. Without saying a word. With music playing in the background like a soundtrack to a scene where the heroine regains control. Andrea was waiting in a cafe by the water. She had aged. She looked tired, but her eyes were still the same. Her smile was sad but warm. Thank you for coming, I said. I didn't think anyone would ever want to know. Tell me. She was silent. Then she said, I got pregnant by Mark. In 2021. He promised we'd be together. That he'd get divorced. That this was our future. And a week later, he sent me money. And disappeared. I lost the baby. After that, it was like everything inside me broke. I sat there, clutching a napkin in my hand. Quietly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm ashamed. Because who am I to him? Just another one? But when I found out you had a son, I felt sick. I didn't want you to think it was all over. That the truth was out. Because it's not. Sometimes it hides even from ourselves. I took her hand. You did the right thing. The letter isn't revenge. It's help. We sat there for another hour. No cameras. No evidence. Just two women who had been used. But who had survived. And when I drove back, for the first time, there was no anger. There was clarity. I went home, lay down in bed, and snuggled up to Ethan. And in my notebook, I wrote, Day 45. I don't want revenge. I want to end this. Another week passed. After returning from Jacksonville, I felt something click inside me. There were no emotional swings, no anger. It was just peaceful. I wasn't expecting anything anymore. No explanations, no apologies. And there was peace in that. I hadn't heard from Mark for almost a month. After his defeat in court, he disappeared. I knew he couldn't stand the silence. He always needed drama, new emotions, new faces. And I was no longer part of that scenario. On Monday, I found an envelope in my mailbox. I recognized his handwriting immediately. Inside was a short letter. An apology. I read it. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to close the final page. I felt nothing. I just put it in a drawer. And forgot about it. I went back to work, first from home. Then I went to the office. I signed up for photography classes. I started living again, without constantly expecting betrayal, without control, without analyzing messages and routes. Ethan and I went on a short trip. No plan. No ties. We laughed on the road, listened to old songs, stopped at roadside cafes. And it was the first trip where I really relaxed. No tension. Without a burden. I often think, what would I have said to myself back then, on that day in the pharmacy, when I first heard about Mark's daughter? I would have said this: stop. Don't panic. Don't react right away. Gather the facts. Study the situation. Act decisively. And remember, you owe nothing to the person who betrayed you. I would add, don't believe that life ends after betrayal. It's not the end. It's just the moment when you finally saw the truth. And the truth is not your enemy. It is your compass. People have asked me if I forgave Mark. No. And it's not that I don't know how to forgive. It's just that some actions don't deserve forgiveness. Not out of malice. But because forgiveness should be given to those who sincerely admit their guilt, not those who run away from it. And lastly, I have no regrets. This experience was painful and difficult, but it taught me to value myself. I've become more attentive to people and to the little things. And most importantly, I've stopped living for someone else. Now I live for myself.